Hi, this is Dr. Will Cole, and on this episode of Ever Forward Radio, we get deep. We talk about the art of being well on many different levels. We go where you probably don't want to go, but you need to go. But that's the only way you're going to expand how you want to live your life and take your health to the next level.
3, 2, 1.
Dr. Will, welcome to Ever Forward Radio. It's a pleasure to have you here, man.
Thanks, man. I'm excited to talk with you. It's been a long time coming, but it's official now. We're here. We're talking.
You know, I was kind of expecting, I see your hoodie game is strong, and I pretty much live in mine too, so I was expecting you to pop up the same.
Oh, man, I'm sorry for letting you down. I let myself down today. I got the H&M flannel, but, you know, I have a hoodie. I have a hoodie everywhere, so yeah. They're fun. The pandemic really took my hoodie game to the next level. It's like, and then I got to the point where it's like that point of the pandemic where you're like, okay, I need to give the hoodies a break. I'm feeling like it's just like too much. So I had to like diversify it up a little bit, but still my foundation.
You know, is that a concept for you when it comes to taking care of yourself, your health? This kind of holistic approach you have is being comfortable quite literally in your own skin and introducing a level of comfort to your day to better take care of yourself.
Yeah, it definitely is. And it is like this juxtaposition maybe of like, well, how could a doctor wear a hoodie? You know, and it's telehealth, right? So I've been doing telehealth for 12 years. So I didn't need the pandemic to make it that for me. Like I was always comfortable with being virtual and talking to people. To me, I always wore hoodies when I would be consulting patients or whatever. And it's not just hoodies. It's just like I want to be comfortable on all levels and feel like I'm of service to these people and I have to hold space for these people, specifically with my job. And I can't be thinking about stuff that really doesn't matter at the end of the day. Like I want to be in comfortable on many levels to be able to do what matters, which is figuring out what's going on with the health problem, to hold space for them, to hear them, to do my job. And to me, whether it's a hoodie or something else, like that's peripheral. So might as well be comfortable while I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Couldn't agree more. And, you know, coming from, I'm an East Coast guy myself. We were just talking about before we hit record. And that's got to be, I think, one of the biggest things that I've noticed going from that way of life to West Coast living is it's this, you know, you could look like you got an outfit that costs $20, but in reality, it costs you maybe $2,000. And this level of immediate kind of respect, there's no judgment that I've experienced anywhere here. You know, I can walk into Starbucks, I can walk into Cartier, I can walk into a Nike store, and it doesn't matter what is on the outside. There's just this immediate respect and immediate, hey, you are a person. I recognize you are here on a comfortable level, and I'm just going to meet you there. That I think is such an important factor to our well-being that honestly, I don't know if people really are taking home. Like your comfort factor matters, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like, and it could be clothes. It could be something else. People that aren't, you know, that are listening to this and not seeing this, like I'm in this room for 11 hours a day. So like for me, I want to bring things that are like centering to me and calming to me and in alignment with what I need to do. So for me, it's like I bring plants in, like I have huge cacti in my office. I have essential oil diffusing. I have like this iced tea, this black organic iced tea that I love. So I think that we need to make our spaces, whether that's a home or work or wherever, like do what we can, but whatever's reasonable. For me, this is all reasonable stuff to me. If I'm going to be here for 11 hours a day, I want to be enjoying it. And so many people, it's this arduous, restrictive, like just miserable existence. I don't want to live like that. But these are simple things. We're talking about a $19.99 hoodie at H&M, and we're talking about some cactus and a diffuser. It's all pretty realistic stuff to integrate into my life, but it brings me peace and joy, and I like the simple things in that way.
And you bring up a really good point here when it comes to our health and our wellness, especially the way that you approach it. And I think we're very similar here in a very holistic manner, in a very quite literally everything matters, just to a varying degree. it doesn't take a whole lot sometimes to just be a drop in the bucket that is the ripple of monumental change. So from your kind of functional medicine holistic lens, can you give the listener, what are some of the most common things maybe that people sleep on that can have dramatic effects in their wellness that compound basically over time and don't take a whole lot?
Yeah. Well, I think we need to look at the little things, right? Because I mean, most of the patients that I talk to are extremely erudite, very well researched people. They know the basics, right? They know way more than the basics, and they're still spinning their wheels. They're better off most of the time. They're better off than they would be if they weren't so conscious about health and wellness and taking care of themselves and living in that way, but they're not where they want to be. So I have a feeling that's probably most of your listeners. And I've really want to implore them to look at the nooks and crannies of their life that they're holding on to, that sometimes they don't want to go there because they're like, it's not that big of a deal. It's not that much of a needle mover because really they don't want to give it up, and they know intuitively deeply that this could be an issue, but they don't want to explore if it's an issue or not because they're not ready to let it go. So for me, I see this time and time again where it's like that when we go there and we go to the place that they are holding on to, that's when we move past the plateau. That's when we make a paradigm shift for their health, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually as well. So like something that comes to mind is alcohol. I think that people sleep on it because they don't want to go there. That they think, well, it's just a little bit of drink. Like I'm not an alcoholic. And I think, well, first of all, people's relationship with alcohol exists on a spectrum. They may be functioning, but if you're needing that alcohol to wind down or socialize with your friends or in that relationship and that whole relationship circled around alcohol, or you having fun or dealing with your anxiety, alcohol is a part of your life. I find that that's somewhere that people sleep on, willingly sleep on, because they don't really want to go there. So I think that, this year and years to come, I really want people to look at the things that they're not ready to go and go there. Let this be the year that you go there and say, is this really serving me? Is this really, it may not be a massive, huge problem, but if it takes you to your next level, moves you past your plateau, man, I see people, it's a bad trade-off to go back once you move past that plateau because you feel so great that you love feeling great more than you thought you missed that thing, whether that's alcohol or something else. But really, I feel like that's a conversation that needs to be had. It's a neurotoxin, and it is definitely, I have a issue with it being normalized within the health and wellness community as like this thing, right? It's like we eat super clean. We're having all the organic, sprouted, grass-fed, whatever, but we drink consistently. And I want people to have the freedom to do whatever the heck they want to do. If they want to drink, let them drink. But I still, if they're coming to me and saying, I don't feel good, what's going on? We have to have a tough conversation about the things that aren't working for you, that aren't in alignment with your goals. And I think that alcohol definitely should be to be talked about. And that's why I recommend like a low alcohol, meaning the least offensive. If you're going to drink, have a low alcohol, organic, biodynamic, regenerative wine or something like that. And I, support companies that are at least providing alternatives like Dry Farm Wines. I think that curates wines that fit that criteria. Not that I think wine is a health food. I don't. But I have to be pragmatic sometime and say, well, if they're going to have something like this, what's the least offensive to their physiology. So I think that's one. And I think looking at sleep is another massive one too. It's like people like say, I'll sleep when I'm dead, or like they stay up too late. They're on their phones and technology. It's like they have to really look at the quality of sleep and like track it. So maybe consider getting a tracking app like Oura Ring, where they really can learn and like be their own N-of-1 experiment and say, where's my deep sleep? Where's my REM sleep? What's my quality of my sleep? Not just the quantity, but the quality of my sleep. Those are two. I mean, that's a bad play on words here. You say like, what do people sleep on? But I didn't plan that. I did not plan that. But sleep and alcohol are two things that I think people sleep on because they just don't want to go there. They don't want to prioritize these things because they're like almost so fundamental and like so much like, well, we know that's important that they don't give the respect they don't get the respect they deserve. And I think that we need to look at those things within the health and wellness community and having this conversation.
And to your point there, the two really do go hand in hand. I have been amazed over the years as I've become just more aware, paying attention to my body. You used the word intuitive earlier, and I would love to dive deeper there in a second on your definition of that and how we can apply it. But in terms of just how I feel, the qualitative state, biofeedback, and then I'm a Whoop user here, and I use that for monitoring my data, such as sleep. I have been blown away at the little cues, the little things that I can do that push the needle so incredibly far on my sleep. And to the other side of alcohol, when I have even just a glass of wine, a beer, or even, a couple, but even just with one, I can see a measurable quantitative dip in my sleep health in terms of sleep quantity and sleep quality. So if you could please, now that we've kind of brought up these two elements that people are, again, sleeping on, how do they kind of work against each other? How, by maybe overusing or not being aware of our alcohol consumption, we're actually harming our sleep, and vice versa there.
Yeah. So I want people to have a nuanced, grace-filled relationship with both of these topics, right? I don't want to come from a place of like, shaming you into like behavior modification, but I do want you to have a mindful, introspective, like reckoning with, are these serving you or sabotaging you? And avoiding things that make you feel like crap isn't restrictive. It's self-respect. So that's the paradigm shift I'm coming at this with. And that's the same paradigm shift that I come with food too, is using these, like going for things that make you feel good. What's in alignment with your goals? And that goes back to just having a why that's big enough that consumes all this junk that's like out of alignment with it. Like how do you want to feel? How do you want to live? And are there alternatives that are pragmatic compromises where it's not a complete abandonment of your goals? Like I mentioned, like a little alcohol wine in small amounts occasionally. So what alcohol is doing, I mean, as I mentioned, alcohol is a neurotoxin. So if you're just looking at that active, like ingredient, if you will, within an alcoholic drink, the alcohol itself is a neurotoxin. So it's putting a lot of stress on the body, depending on how much you're drinking and your tolerance to alcohol too, depending on what else you have going on. Some people just have not a tolerance to it at all. They're already having detoxification impairments. They're already having inflammatory problems. They're already having gut problems. And it's like stressing an already stressed out system. It's not even necessarily that the alcohol is causing all the problems, but it's like
throwing
really
salt in the wound.
Yeah, exactly. It's exacerbating the whole issue. So it's stressing the liver out, stressing your gut out, stressing your brain out. That's in short what it's doing. And if your cup or bucket's already overflowing, it's just going to be adding to that problem. Now, when you deal with all the other things that I deal with patients, like work on their gut health, working on lowering inflammation, working on stress and trauma and all of these things, that empties that bucket pretty significantly. So maybe if they do have that occasional drink, they can handle some stress. And the human race is here because it can handle some stress. So I'm not saying you have to be Victorian, puritanical teetotalers about alcohol, but we should look at as a humanity, we're already overflowing. We already hit our tipping point with the amount of autoimmune conditions and inflammatory problems and mental health, brain health issues, that it's like, this is not working for us. We don't have the wiggle room that our great grandparents had. We're exposed to a lot of junk, and it's just too much. And what's the junk we can control? And this is one of them. So we can have some agency over cleaning our lives up and realizing we don't have necessarily the resilience that humans had a few generations ago because the amount of epigenetic stressors that we have. This is just one of them. It's one of many of them. But I think the insult that alcohol has on our brain, our gut, and our detoxification system, specifically the liver, is great. And it's too much. So you're absolutely right. I can't tell you how many patients we're tracking this data, whether it's a Whoop you mentioned or an Oura Ring or some sort of other biohacking tracking app. We can see heart rate variability, HRV, being impacted from just small amounts of one glass, or their REM sleep tank, or their deep sleep tank from just one drink. And this is going on repeatedly multiple times a week for ad infinitum, like for years of people's lives. And this plays a cumulative toll on their health and how they feel. And then they wonder why they're fatigued and have brain fog and have digestive problems and have weight loss resistance and these issues. Well, it's because you're really adding to that overflow of that bucket by these little micro stressors. Like we think, well, it's just a drink here, or just a drink there, or just a drink there. It's like all of these things add up, and we need to start going to the, like I said, the nooks and crannies of our life that we're like, it's not like we're somewhere, I don't want to deal with this right now. But sometimes we have to deal with these things because it's a cumulative effect that can really, when you cut it out for a while or indefinitely, you really can elevate your health to such a powerful thing. So yeah, they're connected. Sleep and alcohol for sure connected.
And maybe not to go too far down a rabbit hole here with the whole biohacking and wearable aspect, but I'm a believer, and I've used health technology and wearables in some way, shape, or form for probably like pushing 8 years. I mean, it was the one thing that I would use the most. Before being running Everford Radio, I was a clinical health coach. And I would work hand in hand with patients in the clinic, working with their doctors. And it was really this other tool that allowed me to stay tethered to them, and honestly for them to stay tethered to themselves once they walked out of my office. And the other 6 days of the week or 29 days of the month or however long it was going to be before they came back in to see me, what was going on in that interim? And I think this is where I would love to get your opinion. When it comes to a wearable, when it comes to, quote, biohacking, getting any kind of quantitative data on yourself, I believe that there's this mindset of, I'm not that person. It's all or nothing. I'm not trying to hack the system. But my argument is it gives us just enough information to allow us to make a more educated and empowered decision, even in the smallest way. I track my Apple Health, my Apple Watch, my Whoop, but it's not driving or dictating my life. It provides a screenshot, quite literally, of where I am. It's the dashboard on the car, right? And if I see a light as green, yellow, or red, it drives my awareness. How would you describe the best way for people to kind of, if they're interested in using a wearable so that it doesn't consume them? Am I on the right path here?
Yeah, 100%. And that's always a balancing act that in a conversation that I have with patients is that even that term biohacking, I use it. It's the best way to really describe that community and culture and where these tech things come from. But I don't think of it as a hack in the most literal sense. I use it as an awareness tool, an educational tool. Like you said, a snapshot, because we love labs in functional medicine. So I'll run the blood labs. I'll look at the data from a diagnostic standpoint. These are real life mini report cards where you can track over time, where you're not pulling the blood like we're doing, every 6 months or so. We are able to really say on a day-to-day basis, what's some objective data points to track over time? So I feel like the context of these things matter. I do feel like some people, and not necessarily with Oura Ring per se or Whoop or any one, but I'm saying sometimes with these biohack wearable devices, they can be a source of stress for some people. And that's the antithesis of why they should be used. So I think that how some people use them, especially something that comes to mind is like a diet tracking app. Like if you're measuring macros and you're looking at food sensitivities and a food tracking of, all right, what foods are causing what symptoms and how do you optimize food as nutrition, right? And food as medicine. I find that could be long-term for many people, like just this arduous thing. And it kind of takes the fun and lightness out of eating. But I still am an advocate for them for a time for you to introspectively be your own N of one experiment and use it as a mindfulness or awareness tool and educate yourself on how food fuels your body. And the same applies to these sleeping, as like check in with your body, wear it for a couple weeks and months. Oftentimes I feel like at the beginning, it may be a bit clunky if someone's not used to that, but then it becomes just second nature and it's not a source of stress. But even if it is, then wear it for a time, then take it off. I feel like, and then pick it back up and check back in maybe when you're having a tough time and you want to get the data back in again and wear it for another maybe 30 days to check back in. And some wearables even recommend that. Like I think of Levels, the continuous glucose monitor that's direct to consumer, like under this umbrella.
I got one on right here. Yeah, I'm on my fourth cycle of the year. Yeah.
And that's what they recommend. They recommend these cycles. Check in when you want to learn more about your body. Get curious about it. So you can use the Whoop or the Oura Ring or any one of these things out there for a time to do like a 30-day experiment per se, and then drop it if you want. Keep it simple. I like keeping it simple with these things. But for me, like my Oura Ring isn't adding to my stress. It helps me be more mindful about these things because I know if I have caffeine too late in the evening, it's going to throw off my sleep score. And it's not like I want to do the thing that like improves my score so I can feel better the next day. So for me, it's just keeping me more conscious of the decisions that I make and how it impacts my physiology. So that's what I would say. If it's causing you stress or anxiety or shame or orthorexia, which is like a disordered eating around healthy foods, then drop it. It's not worth it. Your mental health and your emotional state's more important than these things. But if you have the vessel to contain this information, then pick it up and use it for good, not for another source of shame, though.
When do you see being an N equal of one, a study of one? When do you see it kind of straddling the fence of becoming or thinking that you're too self-educated and maybe manipulating or trying to manipulate variables when we should be, coming to someone like you or sharing this information with someone like yourself? How do we kind of balance that?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I mentioned, most of my patients that community, right? They're extremely well read. They know more than most conventional doctors do about health. Like I'm not seeing the basic case. It's extremely rare, I should say. Most of the time, 99.99%, they're so on top, like the 0.1% of awareness and knowledge. And they know the research, they know all the podcasts, they know all the books. And they're, again, better off than most people in many ways, but they're still struggling and they're looking to optimize. I see a massive amount of people that have very, very severe autoimmune conditions that despite all their best efforts, they haven't got a handle on this. Better off than they would be, but not where they need to be. So for me, I see people in the community circling around us in functional medicine. They know it's just like a timing thing. They want to see if they can do it on their own. But it's just like a timing thing of like, okay, I've exhausted all the things I know how to do. And sometimes it's tough to be the person that's the patient or the client and to be the one leading your own health charge. It's one thing to be an advocate for yourself. It's another thing to be informed. I think that's great, but it's hard to be always objective. And then you end up, micromanaging and stressing about this stuff. Like it's not good for your health. So sometimes it's good and actually really smart for smart people to say, I need someone outside of myself, a clinician, a doctor or a coach or something like that to say, what do I need to do? So it's not like this, like for me, I mean, at least for my patients, it's never like this ego thing where like, who's the smartest one in the room? Like you can have all the smartness. I don't care. But it's like, they want to be helped. I want to help them. We're cool. Let's do this together. And it's this collaborative thing where we can get them feeling better.
I have an interesting story to share with you that when you were talking just a second ago about people that are seemingly trying all the things, right? And there's just something that's not clicking, something that's not working, or at least not as much. Long story short, I went down to this really cool kind of neurology center called Wave Neuro a couple of weeks ago and had this amazing brain health scan done. And it just reads beta, alpha, theta, delta, and it kind of gives you an interpretation. It gives you the interpretation of how individually they're operating and overall how your brain is operating. And I've never had a brain health scan. I've done body composition analysis. I've done functional medicine. I've done labs, but I've never had something like that. And so much of the feedback that I got, it broke down basically, this is probably your sleep quality. This is probably the things in your diet, your nutritional components. This is probably a lot of things. And my range was like an 85 point something. And in my head, I was like, I'm not suffering from anything, knock on wood, thank God. I don't have any chronic illness or disease. But of all the things that I am doing to run optimally and efficiently as possible, I was like, damn, I'm only at an 85, which is good. I shouldn't say only, but it made me think, what could I then do to get to an 86? Or what does even an 86% brain health look like? Is a 1% jump monumental, or could I go to 90? Mm-hmm. So I guess my question here is, for those of us that are like your clientele, like your community and people listening to Everforward Radio, they're there, right? We're running optimally and smoothly, but then maybe we run some of these tests and we're like, wow, I've got some room for improvement. How do we go from good to great or great to greater?
Yeah. I wish I saw more patients that were in the I'm really good to greater. What I normally see is anywhere from I'm good with most areas of my life, but there's a few areas that are really creeping in my quality of life. And I know intuitively, or I just know intellectually as well. Like people may not notice it, but I notice it in my life. And it's definitely impacting how I want to feel to the severe autoimmune issue that they just are spinning their wheels and no matter what they do, they can't get their head above water. So I wish I saw more good to great. I see it from time to time, but normally it's yeah, they are the biohacker. They know a lot, but they're really struggling with certain areas in their life that they need someone else to like another pair of eyes to deal with this. Um, so this is a common question that I actually get is people say, they'll get the labs back and they'll say, well, how many people are like all optimal? Like, wouldn't you find
Yeah,
problems?
like where do I rank kind of thing.
Yeah,
I'm hearing that I'm good, doc, but how do I compare to others still?
exactly. They want to know how, but if you ran labs on everybody, wouldn't you find problems everywhere? And this is what I get that asked that question. And I'd say this because I see the people that are feeling great and they just oftentimes what they are is their spouses is that they'll say I want my partner to get labs. They're not really going anything. I just want them to go along the journey with me, but their partner's not really going through anything. I get to see through partners and spouses what optimal can look like, or more or less optimal, asymptomatic. The person's feeling good. They're both like a they're a biohacking couple, and the one's feeling fine. Their labs more or less look optimal. And by optimal, I mean the Institute for Functional Medicine's optimal range. I'm not looking at brain scans per se, but I know what you're talking about. But I'm talking about blood labs, microbiome labs, toxicity, inflammation labs, hormonal labs, this type of stuff, immunological labs, all lining up optimal. Like there may be a few tweaking nutrient deficiencies slight that we have to deal with, but more or less, I do not see the cascade of issues or the pattern of issues from a biomarker standpoint that need to be addressed. So I have enough data over my 12 years of doing this and thousands of labs to know if someone feels great and they know in their body they more or less just want to double check everything, make sure they're not missing anything. There might be some fringe of fluctuations, but more or less you could be in the optimal zone because the optimal zone for most biomarkers is still a span of numbers, meaning there's nuance and fluctuations depending on the day because these labs are all snapshots in time, but more or less you're going to govern within that. You're going to reside within that range, the optimal zone. It's the people that know something's off. If we're running the right labs, we're looking at the stones, so to speak, that are most likely to have something underneath it. We're going to find something. It may not be exactly what you think it's going to be, which is why we're running the labs to get the answers, but we're going to find things to optimize. So something specifically about that brain scan, like I would say, if the doctor that's looking at this, they could use their clinical experience to say, look, you're better than most people. But look, it's not easy. It's not hard to say that in our culture, right?
Yeah.
Chronic health
Yeah. Yeah.
problems are so ubiquitous. It's like, all right, I don't want to be average. I want to be optimal. And that's what the functional range is too. It's looking at optimal, not just average. The statistical, like that reference range you get from these conventional labs are largely just averages of people who go to labs, which are not the healthiest group of people. So I'm looking at it through the lens of optimal. Where does your body function the best? And that's the functional range. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, it does. It does. And it brings up something I want to circle back to. You've brought up several times how we feel, the feeling of the person, intuition. And I think that is one of the most overlooked concepts or principles of our health. I think we've gotten a lot better as a society, and people I think in both of our communities here are much more aware, much more educated and empowered than even 5-10 years ago. But there is never going to be a better insight or a better coach than yourself. You have this direct divine connection to yourself. So how then do you help people develop the sense of intuition or help them crack it open even more so that they have this even more direct source to themselves?
mm-hmm. Yeah, I honestly think to me, like that's the core of what I do. That's if I had to really look at like the heart of what I do in functional medicine, it's learning the art. I mean, that's part of the reason why I call my podcast The Art of Being Well. It's because it's this duality of the science and art of what I do in functional medicine. The art of it is applying the science in a way that works for them sustainably and learning the rhythm that can't always be quantified on a lab, but utilizing the labs and utilizing the wearables or utilizing clinical experience for a time. But ultimately, that, like I said, that own N of one, what's your own N of one experiment making your life the lab? That's really the art of wellness. So to me, it's this beautiful paradigm shift that starts off sometimes clunky because you have this guy and his team looking at labs, designing a protocol for you, curating all this stuff, clinically monitoring you, coaching you, guiding you, being relentless sometimes in the pursuit of what we know you're possible, adjusting as we need to, because again, we can see responsively like using life as a lab. How do we evolve this protocol over time? Like what tools within the toolbox work for you? But then there's this paradigm shift that shifts from, all right, it's this thing that I'm being told to do to, oh, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great. I'm feeling to the next level. And then it's not about us telling them what to do or what not to do. They love feeling great more than they don't need someone to tell them. They just know intuitively, this is what my body loves. This is what my body hates. Avoiding the stuff that my body doesn't like is like, it's common sense. It's like a bad trade-off to go towards something that dims the light that you built for yourself. So it's cool, but you have to see it through. And that tipping point, that paradigm shift takes time for some people. Sometimes it happens pretty early on. Sometimes it happens further down the road. But to really build this like another way that I say is like wellness is a sacred art and you are the masterpiece. That's how I see this is. There's like this like molding this pot, this beautiful masterpiece that takes time. But once you build it and mold it into something beautiful, you have your center. And it's kind of like it's such an intuitive thing that people don't. I wanted to get to the point where I see patients like once a year, if that, and it's basically to like run basic checkup labs and like see pictures of their kids and their dogs and their grandkids. It's like, that's where I want to get. I want to become basically obsolete if I'm doing my job because there's hundreds of other millions of people to help get to that point where you're at now.
Through the lens of functional medicine, here we are now in 2022. What do you feel should be on the radar of most people, most human beings going into this next year?
I would say the two things that we talked about, I won't belabor them again, but I really feel like this is the year where more and more people, like we heard it for the past few years, like in the community of wellness, we heard like sober curious and people like having like this experience because it's come to just a head. Like it's just the culture is in many ways sick. And they're self-medicating with things that are perpetuating their sickness. And there's just like a deep unhappiness and a deep like mental emotional spiritual dis-ease and a physical dis-ease going on in our culture that they're using these things to numb themselves and to just distract themselves. Alcohol, technology is part of that, right? But I think that beyond that, I think we need the other thing that people need to be looking at is the powerful impact that stress and shame has on their health too. And something that I've been talking about for the past 2+ years publicly, the past 10 years with patients, but like really looking at this bidirectional relationship between thoughts and emotions and our physiology. Because, stress and shame and this type of like negativity on a mental emotional level will impact their inflammation levels, their gut health, and their hormones just as much as that food that's going to be inflammatory. And it's a lot more. It's easier to say, don't like these foods X, Y, and Z will raise inflammation and mess your gut up. So like, don't have them, right? Then you just take them out, right? But it's a lot more nebulous to say, how do you tell someone to stop shaming themselves or stop stressing about things? Then they stress about not stressing. And it's like, it doesn't work like that. It's a lot, the work, and I don't even like using the term work, but the awareness mindfulness muscle that needs to be flexed. Takes time. But I think really cultivating acts of stillness in our very noisy world is paramount. So like the simple things, and most of this stuff's completely free, but like getting out in nature and like utilizing the science around, Shinrin Yoku or forest bathing and using nature as a meditation, I think has to be part of our humanity moving forward. We are divorcing us being divorced from nature is a major part of why we're having all the problems that we're seeing. And you see what's happening environmentally as far as climate change and all of that stuff. There's physiological global warming going on in the form of chronic inflammation. And we're a part of nature. And a part of that is we are just a reflection, a microcosm of what's going on a larger global level. So I think that forest bathing and meditation and digging into these practices that are within the community, but I think needs to be elevated to the point of like mainstream, I think it can't just be the people in Abbot Kinney. It can't just be the people. It can't just be the random person in Venice Beach. It has to be.
It can't be the people hanging out in Erewhon every day.
Yeah, exactly. I love you. I love all you people. But but it can't just be this. We need the mom in Iowa. We need like the dad in Tampa to like be cultivating this stuff too, because it's pervasive and it should be democratized and we need to destigmatize these tools.
You make me think there of the other side of the coin here. If it's not going to be the people that are already aware, or already doing the self-education, Whole Foods, Erewhon, the Abbot Kinney, and if you're here in LA, you know what I'm talking about. But everybody else in Middle America, everybody else across the world. And so for me, that brings up the other side of the coin of the industry. Now, the people that get it, they're going to get it, and they're going to keep putting things out there. But I'm curious, in your professional medical opinion, where is the industry doing the biggest disservice right now? And by industry, I mean the food industry, the pharmaceutical industry. Where do you see, if you could have a genie give you a magic wish for these industries that aren't maybe shining a light like others are, what would that look like so that Mary in Iowa could have this paradigm shift?
I think that the industry's actually done a great job. I mean the health and wellness industry, if there even is one, right? I mean, I'm talking about, because what I love about the health and wellness industry as a whole is that we are independent people that have a common bond, but we're moving corporations is what we've done. And because through podcasts, through books, through television shows, even I think of Dr. Oz and like what, for all, whatever your opinion is on his show, he took that into Indiana and Illinois and the Midwest and the South to like the random lady that's never heard of anything. He's talking about some of this stuff that maybe isn't as deep, weird wellness as some of you and I know about, but it still got them thinking about some things like fasting and keto and healthy fats and stuff. I think that's awesome. So I think that these independent people, brave people that want to have this conversation over the past 10 years, 12 years is really what I've seen the past 12 years as being an amazing change that I've seen over the community of podcasts and information, democratizing this information. I think it's really awesome. And then you go to something like, well, I mean, not for the past 2 years, but like before the pandemic, going to something like Expo West, right? Where it's in Anaheim every year at the Anaheim Convention Center. And it's like the biggest natural food grocer expo in the world. You see people from all around the world come there, right? But you see these massive corporations that are like, they're going there because the dollar's there, right? They're going there. There may be some people in the company that really believe in this, but for the most part, you can assume they're going there because
usually starts with an opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an opportunity. They want to tap into a market that's not been there. But to me, it's like, that's still good. It's giving people options as long as the integrity is preserved. To me, it's like, no matter what the motive is from the up top CEO, it doesn't really matter. It's like, what's the consumer? Are the consumers getting choices? And I live in a small rural town in Western Pennsylvania, near West Virginia, Ohio, like not Abbot Kinney. And I can see healthy food at Aldi, at Costco, at Walmart, at Target. I think this is good stuff. I would never have seen that 12 years ago here. So to me, I think it's awesome that what's happening. What's unfortunate is now we're at a weird part of society where it seems like there are certain interests that don't want that conversation to be going on in the way that it has been. And that's unfortunate because now that we're making ground, now they're actually improving people's health. Like I'm getting people healthy. And the idea that me and my people in the space can't be having this conversation with fear of being censored and shut down when we're just getting people healthy, all based off of some algorithm and people's opinion is the unfortunate thing. Because I think we made some good ground. So why do we want to stop that?
Great answer. I really did love that answer. And I would agree. I think there has been a lot of progress done, but just for people further along on the spectrum, towards the holistic, towards the functional, some people might just still feel like it's not enough. It's not enough. It needs to be more. And we owe it to ourselves and we owe it to the rest of the world to really stop and turn back and look at, even if it has just been a step, that is a very, very important step because that's the change that we're all after. And it's going to take a single first step in order for them to get further along in their journey.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. I even think of like going to Chipotle, it's owned by McDonald's, right? It's like Melissa Urban, a friend of mine, like I don't even know if they still have it, but they at least tested out that cauliflower rice and they are going for better humane versions of the meats. So they're not like all the CAFO stuff. They're actually going towards ethical standards for like meat. To me, it's like, okay, that's amazing that basically one powerhouse woman could make a massive corporation actually consider cauliflower rice and healthier alternatives to things and come up with a Whole30 bowl or a keto bowl.
Hell yeah.
Like that's freaking amazing. Yeah. So cool. Like to me, let us run things. Let us run things. Don't be afraid of health.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of health. And that to me, it's like, that's the bigger thing of functional medicine. It's like, it doesn't have to be either or. It doesn't have to be like us and health and wellness and then like whatever this pharmaceutical corporate world. Let's be both and. Like, let's pick the best of the world. I just don't feel like censorship should be needed. I think people can think for themselves. That's the benefit and beauty of free speech. And don't be afraid of it. It's like people can think for themselves. That's what this country is founded on. And I think that we can continue to have these robust conversations. And you can pick, if you want to pick the best of conventional medicine, some people are alive because of medications. And we need advancements in science. We need advancements in pharmaceuticals. So let that be. But we also can have conversations about other things too. And maybe some of it won't hold water. That's okay to evolve and pivot and change your mind and learn and grow. And let the world decide for itself.
And making that decision for ourselves has to be one of the most personal choices and can only come when it needs to come. And it leads me to my final question here, Will, of the moment for me, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, when we realize I have a lot of dominion over my body, over my health, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, comes from instances or even just one major life event where that's taken away. And for me, I had two significant moments. That was watching my father die at the age of, I was 19 from a terminal illness. And then just a couple of years later, being so severely injured in the military of having to learn how to walk again twice and being so grateful for the ability of the human body when given the right environment and the right attitude and the right conditions, it wants to not even, I won't say just be in homeostasis, it wants to thrive. And that decision first has to come from with us. And that is what I'm talking about when I say living a life ever forward. That's the whole meaning of the show here. So I'm curious, how does that fall on you here today, Will? What does it mean to you to live a life ever forward?
Well, I mean, I think that's really what I tried to do every day when I'm consulting patients, when I'm with my family, with my wife and kids. It's like, how do we I see the fragility of life because I'm reminded on an hourly basis when I'm consulting patients, the fragility of life, like things that we all take for granted, like going to work or being able to drive or being able to play with your kids or go on a hike. I see that taken away from people all the time. And it really keeps me at least very cognizant of like in a bigger state of gratitude, and sort of cultivating that gratitude and compassion towards people that were kind of doing all the things and it was taken away. And we can't control everything in life. So I really feel like what you stand for and the conversations you're having is something that I hope we all can start to cultivate more of this. Like, what does that look like to be ever forward and look at the small things in life and appreciate them and have compassion for people no matter where they're at on their journey. And I think a part of that conversation that I really am learning deeper about for myself as well is like looking at the world and sort of the toxic tribalism that's going on right now and saying like, man, like we need to not be so concerned about other people's opinions about us or like what the next person's doing or this FOMO inducing content you see on social media. It's like at a certain point you need to unplug, use technology for good. We're connecting with people around the world right now. And that's how I consult patients. That's good. We don't have to be Amish here. But the reality is like, how can we then to a certain point to live our life? So I think honestly, ever forward, kind of back to my earlier statement of just connecting with the earth and connecting with your present moment, like what's here. And root yourself in the present moment. And something that Eckhart Tolle says, like he says, make friends with the present moment, right? Don't use the present moment as an obstacle or a means to an end or an enemy, but really make friends with it. And to me, that's where humanity needs to go. And I'm speaking to myself too. I think that we need to really find things that root ourselves in the present moment, whether that be mindfulness meditation, getting out in nature, or spending. And part of present moment awareness is if you're with your kids or with your loved ones, or if you're doing your job, even the most mundane thing, like how can you really be a channel for something beautifully magical in that present moment? And like I was vacuuming this morning in my office and like making that a meditation. I don't think it needs to be some massive, cool, like whatever wellness retreat.
Are you about to do a collab with Dyson on a meditation device?
I think you can make the most mundane thing super fun. Like how awesome it is that we get to live this life and appreciate these things that you could just relegate to like unimportant or an obstacle, but like make friends with it. And so I don't know. To me, that's what you're talking about really means to me, at least.
There's never a wrong or right answer. So every interpretation is greatly appreciated and your own. And it really does help my mission and everybody here listening, because I have my reasons for what I do and why I do it. But those are my reasons. And, to hear another interpretation of how I have chosen to view the world helps me view the world beyond my own view, if that makes sense. It helps me see it through how I want to see it, but not through myself, and to be connected, like you're saying, to other people and their interpretation. It's all truth, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I think that the more I see like ever forward, even the concept of being progressive and being progressive minded, I find like the more we progress, if we progress in a healthy way, we're going to find we bring a lot of things from the past with us, but almost like a rebirth of it in a more compassionate way and in a healthier way. But like we've divorced ourselves so much from the planet, and I think reconnecting with the planet is the most progressive thing you can do.
Amen, brother. Well, it's been a pleasure finally connecting with you here. Thank you so much for your time. We're going to have all of your information listed for everybody down in the show notes and video notes. But real quick, if they want to connect right now, where are they going? Where can they go online? Instagram? Where's your best hangout?
Thanks, man. Yeah. So everything's at drwillcole.com, drwillcole.com. So the links to the books, the podcast, all the stuff there. The clinic is all there. I'm most active on social media. I'm on all the channels, but I'm the most active on Instagram. I'm trying TikTok out. I'm 1983 kid, man. I'm like too freaking old for this stuff, but I'm really trying to educate people through that medium as well. But someone has to help me out.
I'm with you. I'm 85 myself, and even 2 years is still. I'm not any better off than you, I think. So we can join a support group, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. Help us, please.
Awesome. Well, Will, I'll kill the interview there, my man. Thank you again so much.